This video is about Windows 10, but don't worry because most of the settings will be applicable to Windows 11, as both of those operating systems are really similar. And you might even be able to find some of them in Windows 7. I kind of made this video for myself so that I don't need to remember all of the settings that I have to change after installing a new Windows. So everything that I will be showing here isn't like something that I made up from like some random settings and things that would make a good video. Those are really things that I change and I use and I do whenever I install a new Windows for myself or somebody else. Okay, one last thing before we start. There are two settings which are gonna be really hard to switch off if you've got used to them. So just trust me, switch them off, use your computer for a bit, and then I guarantee you that you won't be able to switch them back on. The first out of two settings is Enhance Pointer Precision, and this can be on only if you're using trackpad on your laptop. And the second really important setting is Disable all sound effects. Sound effects in Windows are only good for like really expensive laptops, which were configured by the manufacturer to work really well with this setting. Otherwise, it's just gonna make your speakers and headphones sound really echoey and bad. Okay, now we can move on to the actual video. So before I even install Windows, I change those four settings. First is don't track me on my computer. Second one is don't track my keyboard. Third one is don't spam me with notifications. And the last one is don't send my data to advertisers. Then I unpin some unnecessary applications from the taskbar and reduce the size of the search bar, because I can just search by clicking on the Windows logo. For healthier mind, I remove the news button from the bottom right, and I take out the Cortana and task view buttons because I never needed them. To clean up taskbar even more, we can get rid of the icons in the bottom right by putting them inside this arrow thing. By using Ctrl-Alt-Delete shortcut, we can create a password for a system that doesn't require us to use any sort of hints. Now, this is a very important one. I enable pointer precision by disabling pointer precision in Windows. If this setting stays enabled, your mouse will move different distances based on how fast you move your mouse, which is very terrible. The only place where this setting could be enabled is probably for some trackpads for some laptops if you need to move your mouse somewhere far really quickly, but nowhere else. This is disaster of a setting, and for some reason it's enabled by default on Windows. In the power options there is a lot of important settings, for example preventing your PC from going to sleep by itself. You can also gain some speed out of your hardware if you only switch to high performance mode. And there in the advanced power settings, if you've got laptop, you can change a lot of very cool things, like for example what it does when you close the lid, or the performance itself on the battery power. If you need to be a little bit more power efficient, it gives you a lot more granular control over what you've got. But the main reason I'm here is to prevent my computer from waking up from the sleep mode in the middle of the night. In the system settings, we can change what the physical buttons on our computer do. Now, this is a weird one. I'm not sure if it only applies to NVIDIA cards, but there is a setting that limits color output range of the monitors. It seems like this setting is ignored by most of the applications, but I had issues with VLC Media Player and Firefox, where the black wasn't fully black, it was more of a gray color. So I just switched these settings to have full color range on my monitors. In the display settings, we can change positions of the displays relative to each other. We can also select which display should be the primary one. And you can increase the refresh rate of your monitor if it supports more than default 60 Hz. Everyone loves spamming shift in Minecraft. But don't you hate it when the sticky keys pop-up throws you out of the game? It's actually really easy to turn off. The default Windows graphics drivers are kind of crap, so I usually install them myself. For Nvidia you can get the drivers from their website, but I like to use this GeForce Experience software which keeps my drivers updated. Just remember that if you perform clean installation, you're gonna have to redo the removal of color limits in the settings. C, D, G, H. Let's fix those drive letters inside Windows Disk Management software. Because Windows File Explorer is really slow with zip files, I use 7-zip. Don't use WinRAR because it's not worth it. Okay, now I will change the zip files to be opened by default by 7-zip. I would like to know whether I'm opening an image or exe file with virus in it, so I will show the file extensions. Not far from that we can show hidden files. I will turn that on for no reason. On the left side of File Explorer there are duplicate shortcuts, so I will just remove them. Now in the sound, there is a lot of cool settings. For example, I will enable my sound output as a recording device. This will enable me to use any sort of recording software like Audacity to record whatever my system outputs through the speakers. Now I don't like it when Windows reduces volume whenever someone calls me, so I will turn that off. This is very important. I will remove all of the echo and distortion generators from my speakers, and just remember that if you're gonna be using, for example, headphones or maybe your TV for playing sound, you're gonna have to change that settings for each one of them individually. Here I'm not sure why the highest quality audio isn't enabled by default. Lastly, in the sound settings we can disable unnecessary output devices so that the computer won't accidentally send audio to the wrong place. There is this very nifty volume mixer which allows you to change the volume of each application individually. Sometimes when you install Windows, the downloads folder is sorted by name. Just remember to change that. I don't like the preview that's shown when I snap the window to the side of the screen, so I just turn it off. The delete confirmation dialog just slows me down. Well, my computer isn't my phone, so I don't want it to display lock screen after a minute. Some Windows installations have white theme set by default. Just change the settings like I did here to make it look normal. Even though we switched all of the tracking settings off during installation, there are still some more left that we can disable. In the Task Manager there is this tab called Startup, and there we can turn off some software from starting up with our computer to save some CPU. In the taskbar settings, I'm gonna unlock it so that I can move it in between all of my monitors. Then I'm gonna make it smaller, just so that it uses less space. Expanding the icons makes it easier to switch between instances of the same application. And lastly, I'm gonna remove duplicated taskbars from all of my monitors. You can disable the restart device after update, but just keep in mind that this won't prevent your computer from restarting at any other time. If you want to get rid of those annoying finish setting up your device pop-ups, just uncheck this checkbox. And here I'm installing the H.265 encoder for video playback. And now onto the bonus. Those are the things that may or may not be useful to you. There is this setting that lets you change the default File Explorer open location. I personally switched back to quick access after a year. This setting makes your web browser open with all of the tabs from previous session. You can enable copy-paste history by pressing Windows key plus V, but I haven't really used this feature a lot, like only 2 or 3 times in a year, but I'm throwing it out there in case you would find it useful. I personally really liked Windows 7 Start menu, so I can get it back in Windows 10 by installing this classic shell. Apparently it's no longer being updated, so I wouldn't really recommend it to everyone, but for me it's great. And here you can see it in action. When I open the Start menu, it displays all of my most used applications from top to bottom, and when I hover over the arrows, it displays a list of all of the files created by that application. So I no longer have to use my desktop or even look through my files to find what I need. While standard Windows 10 menu just shows you every random crap in your computer ordered alphabetically. GeForce Experience, about which I talked previously, has this functionality called Instant Replay. It constantly records your screen and lets you save last few minutes of the recording when you press the special key combination. Unfortunately, for the last few years it's been quite unreliable and it keeps turning itself off for no reason.